Hey guys, this is part 2 of the podcast. Not much to say here, let's just dive right in.
So what to focus on during a match. And the 4 bullet points that I've sort of written out in this are keeping ideas concise, what's a big deal and what isn't, changes in player behavior, and when to speak / concept of dead air. And a lot of this relates also to your co-commentator, but I think we'll mention that towards the end of it, because that's like general synergy with like a co-commentator, and I think that's like you can mention how to improve on that and how to recognize that like as a general topic as opposed to sort of in the middle of a match, I think. As far as keeping ideas concise, because Skullgirls is such a fast game, if the match has already started, you can't really be talking about necessarily what player one's win condition is. Like, the time for that has already passed, you know?
You certainly can't do a deep dive into detail. You don't want to talk about answers to questions that are being asked during the match because you can go into a million different things.
Yeah.
You just want to talk about what's happening. I think once a match starts, what's a big deal and what isn't is if you've started establishing a narrative at the beginning of the match before it started, then you really only you want to focus on things that impact the narrative that you've set up. So, if things aren't related to it at all, you can just kind of gloss over them. And if things are either completely changing it or they're going along exactly according to it, then, those are the obvious things to talk about.
Yeah.
But you need to sort wheat from chaff very quickly because, if you don't, then you're just kind of talking about what's going on the screen, and people can look at the screen and just kind of know that. And that's kind of the idea of when to speak in dead air is you don't need to talk a huge amount about, Sonic Fox air dashing forward because that's what we'd expect Sonic Fox to do.
Yeah, I think another concept you could sort of talk about in the relation of that is you want to show what the spectators, what you should be looking for and what is important. Like, if I'm sort of moving around at full screen, but my job is to sort of get in and hit them, what exactly I'm doing at full screen isn't very relevant. Or look, chimps is forward dashing, back dashing. That's like, who cares about that? You should be talking about like if, for example, like if a certain assist is really important in a matchup or something, like if the assist gets counter called or if the assist is getting punished really hard, stuff like that is what is actually relevant. Or like I guess like if a BDX sort of whiffs and the other guy punishes it really really hard or something, that's something the spectators would want to be focusing on. Like, oh, this is what player 2 is doing to sort of deal with player 1's game plan. And that's just one example. You could do several different examples of that. Like,
I think it's hard to find an example of something that's clearly not important, but I think that maybe that we should tie this into the when to speak and the concept of dead air is that if the match is telling its own story very clearly, then you don't need to speak and explain things that are very clear. When footsies are happening, you can kind of just let them happen, I would say. Everybody expects, some amount of footsies to go on, and, people that are going to like jab punish assist and stuff like that. I mean, that's clear enough on why that's going on. One thing I like to point out is if people are optimally using movement to punish assists. So like, they throw band. So if somebody throws band out and you launch band and then you jump cancel the launch, that's like a really good idea, right? Because you can get a lot of movement in addition to the hit on an assist, and that's, I would say, a mark of a player that's thinking about all of their options.
Yeah.
That's a good example of something that's something unusual about a assist punish that can be pointed out.
Yeah. And another thing like we could talk about with that is like any changes that are happening in the match that like there's obviously like the variable changes, like if somebody's assist is getting hit or if there's some meter that's being built up or something like that. But there's also like changes in how people want to be playing in the match. If I'm in a match and I'm sort of running away at the start, then all of a sudden I start to go in, then that's important, and why that happened or why that might be happening is really important. And you can talk about that and that is more important than like if I was running in from full screen, get a hit, get 3 resets, and kill somebody. The actual resets that I get aren't that important unless they're like super messed up or something.
Yeah, I would say that this particular aspect is when it's most important to think about the match as a player.
Yeah.
That if you should keep note of when people are doing things like reversaling or blocking in a specific way, and then when they change those are things that really will impact. Those are the things when they change their normal behavior. That's when their opponent's going to have to adjust to it, and that's really what the narrative should be about, is the match between those two players. So
yeah, and that's also something that like the spectators would want to be focusing on, like, oh, that's what they're looking for, and like that's what they should be trying to look for in the match and stuff like that. But yeah, that's mostly about what is actually happening during a match.
So that was part 2 of the podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Part 3 will be out next week as always. See you guys in the next one.